Okay, getting back to where we left off yesterday. Let's see, I need my glasses here. I'm filming this. As I'm filming this, I'm looking through the viewfinder so I can make sure the shot is in focus and all that. And I really need my glasses for it. The camera distorts the image just a little bit. I can, without looking through the viewfinder, I can see the edges a lot better. Like on this one here, I think you can tell that this is sharp just by looking at it, even though the video probably doesn't pick it up as well as it would be noticeable in real life. But this right here, this area is sharp. So hopefully if I fail to tell you if it's sharp or not, you can kind of tell. This side's kind of dull. Well used. Looks like a bunch of impact or use, maybe not impact, but use damage. But you never know. I mean, it could be an impact. Sometimes you can shoot an animal with a point and it looks like the point is perfectly intact. After the hunt, some points don't get damaged at all. Some get damaged a lot. Just depends. But this one does look or feel like it was used as far as edge-wise. There's a lot of these in the collection. A lot of these snapped bases. Snapped stems, or snapped low on the point. Fairly sharp, I would say. A little bit better than average. Some cool material in this one. Not quite the same as the more reddish, but cool materials all the same. And this one does feel raw. Although you can nap this raw fairly easily. It is steppy, at least for me it's steppy. It looks like the napper took care of all the step fractures on this one. There might be a little bit of a fingernail there. But if I nap this stuff, it's very steppy. It could also be the freeze and thaw cycles have popped out all the loose flakes except for the largest ones, or the ones that are most stubborn. Quite thin, but they maintain the thickness here across the barb so it doesn't snap. This is a characteristic of most of these. And where the blade tapers down toward the point. Here I have an intact point on one of these. You can see how it tapers down toward the point. Some points don't do that. Out here, they're very consistent, like a slab. They don't taper down to the point. I think most projectile points will taper down to the point, and all the modern points I've seen are like that. But once in a while you'll find a point that is parallel in the side view, and it may have a twist in it. It's common to see, like on Harahei knives, a kind of a twist and a very parallel looking side view because of and a beveling type of resharpening causing a twist. But I don't have any of those knives. I don't have any Harahei knives in this collection. Very robust here in the center. Now I don't know what the percentage is for these needle tips as far as the actual artifacts go, But I would say at least 10% have this type of needle tip on this particular style. But you know, a lot of these are just straight. The blade length is comparable, but one has a needle type tip and the other does not. 1 out of 10 maybe has this, at least. It could be higher. It looks unfinished, so I would say broken in manufacture. The edge is way too crude compared to one that's finished. Let's see what I do with that one. You can see there's quite a difference in the edge quality. Basically the same kind of material, same kind of chert. A little bit different, but the nap's about the same. I would say a lot of direct percussion was used on this, but that's just a guess. It could be indirect with punch work. It could be some heavy pressure. It looks like a lot of force was used to generate these flakes. So, percussion probably. Now this, I don't know why they would pursue making a point out of something with such an obvious defect, unless they were not too concerned about how thick it was in the middle. But this is definitely broken in manufacture because the stem is not well developed. It was probably going to be something like that, or you know, like one of the other ones. See if I can find some similar material. Maybe a little wider than that one, but I think you get the idea. This material is very concretey, you know, has inclusions in it and voids and all kinds of nasty stuff. But yeah, I would say that this is a preform for something that looks like this. So there's a lot of room. You can see there's a lot of room for reduction in the preform. And they don't need to take it down very much as far as thickness goes. Thin down pretty early, at least on this stem. I don't know how thick the upper part was that's missing. The edge is, you know, very wavy, serpentine on all edges. I don't notice any grinding on this side or abrasion. No braiding on this side either. Edges are still fairly sharp. A rather thick and bulky point, but kind of the same break as this one. I don't know what causes this. This is kind of a defect within the stone, I think. Very hefty. This one is very hefty, but it looks like the stem is finished. It has a very well made edge, at least on this side. This side is still a little wavy, but it looks complete. You know, they could take off a few more flakes but this looks like broken in manufacture. And again, it's the concrete type stuff. All these are very similar in material type. It's a very common type of chert around here. I say around here, but that's Central Texas. I'm not in Central, I'm in West. So, but as far as the statewide goes, this is a pretty common material. We don't have much around here where I live. Have to go further west or into Central Texas to get the good stuff. We do have some chert here, but it's very low quality, almost limestone-ish type of chert. Kind of pink in color. Edges not very sharp. It looks like a complete point with some use damage. The stem is contracting more than usual. You know, usually you have more of a straight stem on these. Now what's curious is it's hard to tell if some of these were made by inexperienced knappers, because to me they all look like they're made by guys who knew what they were doing. I rarely see any points that are obviously made by inexperienced knappers, and I find that rather puzzling or kind of odd, right? It takes a lot of skill. Each one of these points that I've been showing takes skill to make, you know, a high degree, at least a year or two, unless they caught on really quick on how to make these. They may have destroyed all of their failed attempts. I know that's what I do, because it's kind of a luck thing. If you have a lot of your mistakes hanging around, it feels like it's bad luck. So I always destroy all my big mistakes. I'll throw a lot of incomplete points in my discard pile. Sometimes I'll give away my broken points, but I don't keep anything that looks really nasty. And I don't have any of my original mistakes that I made a long time ago. This looks like impact to me. It's a well-developed edge, average sharpness, very difficult material to work. I think we've seen this in previous videos. Not because it doesn't flake well, it's very unpredictable. It has these weird pockets of different consistencies, and this one looks like it might have some heat damage, and I can't tell if that's before or after the fact. It looks like it might be after. Wound up in a fire somewhere or somehow. Or it could have broken in the fire and not broke. The tip might have broken off in the fire. Same with everything else. The barb and it may have been a complete point exposed to fire and then just snapped in different places. This one's a nice one. It also shows the developed edge very well. The late stage or final stage edge on these with some use, because this is not sharp down here. Up here it's much sharper up near the point. And when it's flat on one side and domed on the other, they call that plano convex, or plane on one side and convex on the other. This is kind of like that, and it's one of those that has one flat side and one side that's more bulky. So yeah, probably impact or very drastic use. Used and abused. Looks like there's some heavy-duty compression when it was bent to create this kind of a compression type fracture. and then a secondary looking step fracturing type event. Like it snapped off and then it was used again to strike for the second time to cause this kind of breakage. So it could have been a thrusting spear. Banded chert also could be considered agate. It's hard to tell. This type of material is usually, I usually heat treat these because they heat treat so well, and it needs such a little amount that it's so easy to do, and it improves the material quite a bit. But this type here is unpredictable when heat treated. Sometimes it breaks up, sometimes it comes out really nice and glossy and very workable, but it's risky, right? And if you don't have much of the material to start out with, it's hard to justify heating a bunch of it. You know, even if you heat some spalls of it, unfortunately, those spalls or flakes or chips may heat well, but then you go to heat your main item or your preform or Corey blank or whatever, and then it breaks up. There's a good chance of that with this particular type of material, this translucent stuff. This one doesn't feel heat treated. It's much easier to work raw stone when it's narrow. It's much more difficult to get good flakes on a wide point unless you heat treat it. You can see the bases are, you know, almost identical in width, but the blades are different. Now this could be worked down, and it could have started out this way, this thick. But as you can see, it's hard to thin down something wide. It's easier to thin down something narrow, so that may be why a lot of these Pedernales points are narrow with small barbs. It's because they were raw, and shooting these shorter flakes is much easier on raw. Okay, this is an interesting one because it has quite a bit of twist in it. And it looks like a preform to me, or an early stage. It looks a little bit too wide, to me anyway. If it were me, I'd probably take another large flake somewhere, probably on this side. You know, to thin it down, or to create that long thinning flake there. But it looks like end snap due to, you know, a flaw in the material. This material here is a concrete pocket that's very brittle. So I would say broken in manufacture for sure. Edge is still pretty crude and unfinished. And it's interesting to see what kind of work is done, you know, if we can tell if these are percussion or pressure flakes, or indirect percussion or direct percussion. Something this thick, this twisted, I would say direct percussion. With indirect, you can be a lot more precise, and you don't need to go with the flow, so to speak. Go with the curve of the flake, or, you know, favor one side only, and then flip it over and favor the other side, and get into the zone where you're hitting with direct percussion, and you need to be exact. It's easier just to get in the zone and hit the same way on each side. Just flip it and hit it. So in this case, it would probably be this way here. Hit it, flip it, hit it exactly the same way, and it ends up being twisted like this as you develop the blade. And it feels raw. I don't know if I mentioned that, but this is probably a raw piece. Although this material can be heat treated easily. Okay. Get back to the normal shape. This is pretty much the standard shape for most of these, just by looking at the amount that I've looked at so far. Yeah, a little over 3/4. The stem depth is almost the same. Yeah, a little over 3/4, so same width and depth. Now, how do they stay so consistent, right? Well, one explanation might be that they had a pattern to work off of. You know, they kept one of their points hafted, and then they just worked off a pattern. Or there could be some part of the body where you would judge the width of the stem, like against your thumb or against your finger, in both directions. But they're very consistent on average. So this would be an average point, I would think. Let's see if I can try to recreate the blade. Now this one's going to be longer. So it'd be a pretty long point. It could dive inward quickly, but I would say if I were making it, I would make it kind of a long point, especially if it's a knife or can be used as a knife. A little over 3 inches. And let's see, just out of curiosity, the halfway point is the same, a little over 3/4, right? 3/4 is 12/16, right? So it's 12/16 that way. The base is 12/16. Oh no, it isn't. Never mind. The stem depth, I might have made a mistake on that one. Stem depth, I would say, okay, it's closer to 5/8. So I made a mistake on the stem depth or length. Yeah, that one is 13/16. Yeah, halfway point is about the same, 13/16. But the stem length or depth is I'm going to put it there so you can see it, because I'm having trouble reading it. 15 centimeters, easy for me to read. Okay, all right, so sorry about that. I'll quit doing those measurements. I can't seem to get them right. This is kind of crude, but the blade sharper than average. A little broken base, very much damage. It looks like impact. Lots of impact damage. That was thrown at a very high speed, it looks like, or something drastic happened there. This one's kind of twisted too. A lot of drastic damage on that one as well. This one's nice and straight. The base, I mean the ears they're not skewed, they're straight. The barbs are lined up well with the base, but the blade looks a little bit twisted. So it's kind of chaotic, you never know. Some of these have very long barbs and some of them don't. And I'm not sure. There's some work done on Pedernales types. Since there's such a huge variance in shape, I think they've been divided into further types. And I have not kept up on the literature on that. Like this is probably a different type than this, as an example. The bases and stems are pretty much the same proportions, same general concept, but the barbs are completely different. And it could be that these are worn out barbs, but I don't think so. I think there were some of them, like this one here, made narrow with hardly any barbs. Some have very long barbs. Camera's going nuts with the focus. I don't want to hit the manual focus because I'll forget. I'll forget to rezoom, and some of this stuff will be out of focus for long periods of time. These are interesting. I like this particular type. It's very regular. The pattern, the flaking is sort of patterned. Very careful, very deliberate edge work. Very consistent as far as base and stem characteristics. If you find, I can group these together and they will all be very similar. I have some more like this in the collection, and if I put these side by side, they're all very similar in technique and shape, size, edge work, and all that. And this one feels raw. All right. Getting close to the 30-minute mark. Looks like a finished point to me with use damage, impact probably. This one does not look finished. It looks broken in manufacture. Again, lots of concrete. Difficult material to work. It's interesting to see the type of flaking. This can be done with percussion, either indirect or direct percussion, to develop this at this stage. And it does not feel heat treated. It's still kind of rough. Usually heat treated of this material is smoother. Again, not finished, but the stem is well developed. It's just broken in manufacture, in my opinion. Poor quality material, but they'd started out with a very good attempt. Can't tell if it was heat treated or not. Just another stem. Nice material. This is one of my favorite materials here. Still a little bit of cortex at the base. Sharper than average, and probably impact damage. Okay, next ones are going to be pretty quick. That's just a broken little stem. Crazy barb on this one. Edge is pretty sharp, sharper than average. Very large barb on this one. Unfinished, broken in manufacture. Nice little point. Finished and probably broken in use. Unfinished, although it looks like an impact on an unfinished point. So the edge was not developed on this one, which is a kind of a mystery why they would use it in an unfinished form. I'll save that one. Okay.